Hello. My room is a disaster. Give me 1 second. Better. This is all a mess from a convention I went to. It's work-related mess, so it can be here. Because technically, it's tax write-off mess. Anyway, hello. I did not plan to film this video at all, so get ready for me to ramble about Priscilla for a long time. I'm currently working on a significantly more serious video that requires significantly more care, time, research, and effort, and it's also a very taxing topic, so it's been taking longer than I thought it would, and so I've decided to pivot real quick, take a breather from working on that, but it'll be out soon. And like I said, that one's significantly more like structured and scripted, etc. This one is not. This one is me talking about Sofia Coppola's new movie, Priscilla. I saw Priscilla last week, and when I walked out of the theaters, I had no idea what to think of it. I had no idea how to go about reasoning with it. I knew I liked it. I couldn't put into words exactly why. So I sat with it for a week, and now I'm here, and all I want to do is talk about Priscilla. So we're going to talk about Priscilla. If for some reason you are out of the loop of what Priscilla is a movie made by Sofia Coppola. It released this year, and it is based off of Priscilla Presley's memoir, Elvis and Me. I knew of Elvis and Me, and I knew it was a memoir that was worth reading. I had never read it myself, though, until I now went to read it after watching the movie. Whip out my laptop, so at least I'm not saying misinformation during my ramble. This memoir was released in 1985. Immediately, film rights were acquired, like basically instantly. And so there have been a few renditions of this Priscilla story before this movie. Most notably, there was a 1988 miniseries put on the ABC called Elvis and Me. But this adaptation was the big boy. One, because Sofia Coppola, who we love, we stan, we adore. If you don't know who Sofia Coppola is, a lot of the discussion in this video might be lost on you. So, she's Francis Ford Coppola's daughter. She's amazing, she's wonderful. We're looking at virgin suicides, we're looking at Marie Antoinette, etc., etc. And now we are here. The Priscilla movie started principal photography last fall and ended in last December. So all the filming and all of it was done during 2022. This is important to note, because I've seen a lot of people try to critique the pacing of the film based on the writers and actors strike, because since the movie came out in October, was it filming or being actively worked on during the strike? From what I've been able to glean from the production research, it has not. So any critique of the movie cannot be hefted off to the strikes. I was very, very, very hyped for this movie for two main reasons. One, anything Sofia Coppola makes, I love. So I'm very easy on that front. The second thing I was really, really, really excited about was this particular story, because even though I myself was not super familiar with Priscilla Presley, Elvis Presley, and that thing, that whole event, that whole era, I am a huge fan of Baz Luhrmann, and I saw Baz Luhrmann's Elvis, and I got to be quite frank, I did not like it. And I'm pretty much like a ride or die for Baz Luhrmann. I have a lot of excuses for some of his weakest movies. You know, a lot of people despise Moulin Rouge. I could make a 3-hour video essay about why it's the greatest movie musical of all time. I love Baz Luhrmann's Great Gatsby. As someone who loves classic literature, who loves Great Gatsby as a book, I think this is the best adaptation for Great Gatsby ever. Like I said, ride or die for Baz Luhrmann. But I hated Elvis. And so as soon as I saw that Sofia Coppola was making like a parallel, a mirror to that movie, I got very excited. Because I was excited to watch the movies back to back. I was excited to watch Elvis and then watch Priscilla and watch this fully formed creation of them and their relationship come into play. I think a lot of people forget when talking about this movie that we're talking about real people. Elvis was alive and real. Priscilla was, you know, a real person. She still is alive. And to take these two people and analyze them just as characters does both of them a deep disservice, which is why I was so excited for these parallel movies, because you're basically getting their stories semi through their own words in regards to Elvis, but in their own words in regards to Priscilla, and watching these fully formed people and their fully formed human relationship appear. No human is going to be perfect, and no relationship is going to be perfect. And no matter how much love two people have for each other, that doesn't always mean the relationship will be what we as humans imagine when we imagine true love. Relationships that have rocky starts can have beautiful endings. Relationships that have beautiful starts can have awful endings. And sometimes you have something that's in between. Before knowing about the Priscilla movie, I did know Priscilla's age. When she started to get with Elvis, I was aware Priscilla was 14 when they met and began their tryst? Is it tryst or tryst? I was aware of how that started. Obviously, in the modern age, I have my own thoughts and feelings about this. As we see in the Priscilla movie, because of the time that this took place, it was obviously still weird, but it was more excusable. And that doesn't make it okay, but it explains why it happened. I guess it's a good way to put that. And I think the growth of the relationship and the growth in maturity for the character of Priscilla was so wonderfully handled. Kaylee Spaney plays Priscilla with a very intense carefulness, a attention to detail and nuance that you don't really see in a lot of modern acting. Obviously, big props to the hair and makeup team for aging her, like 20, 30 years during the span, like the time frame of the film. Excellent work for them with the details of how her hair, her style, her makeup, her body, how it changes through the length of the film. Obviously, props to hair and makeup, but Kaylee Spaney puts these very specific details into how each age of Priscilla is played. You see these tiny mannerisms, how she walks, how she sits, her very specific type of smile, the nuances in the cadence of her voice. You see her mature over the span of the film, and it's just masterfully done. Jacob Elordi, obviously, or is it Elordi? Is it Elordi or Elordi? Tall Euphoria man. He obviously kills it as Elvis. I prefer him significantly over Austin Butler. I'm sure most people would agree with that, though, so that's not really like a hot take. I think he also plays Elvis with a carefulness that is hard to, it's hard to see when you go into a biopic of any kind of a human being that was so popular that their name and image transcends them as a person. Great example is the Freddie Mercury biopic I can think of. How do you balance the popular image caricature of them, the recognizable one, the one people will think is authentic, versus who this person actually was? How do you put that balancing act together? I think Jacob Elordi did a great job. I also think that the chemistry between the two actors was palpable. It's very hard to find actors that feel real around each other nowadays. In a lot of films, popular mainstream films, I'm noticing a lot of the actors, I've been calling it the Marvel effect, where even if it's not true, they are acting like they are both on a green screen, not in the room with each other. They're not playing off of each other. They are speaking their lines at each other and then waiting to do their next planned reaction. But I feel like when it came to Jacob Elordi and Kaylee Spaney, they were in the room with each other. Not just literally, but mentally, they were there. They were working off of each other. There were no planned reactions. There was just natural human ohs at what each other were doing. You know what I mean? And there was a genuine love that you could feel between the characters of Elvis and Priscilla, which was very important for Sofia Coppola to show. Despite how tumultuous their relationship was, Priscilla stands by the fact that Elvis was her guy, her one true love, the one she was supposed to meet and be with. Even if it wasn't perfect, it was hers. And I think they captured that energy really well. And I think it was interesting watching Elvis and Priscilla's energy grow with each other throughout the series as well. You watch Priscilla start off being a little bit more meek and willing to lie down to Elvis's treatment. And then you see the scene where she's pregnant. She's 7 or 8 months pregnant. Elvis is trying to break it off with her so that he can go sleep with other women. And instead of fighting or anything like you've seen her do previously, instead of seeing her raise her voice, her cry, her kind of have such a visceral reaction to his treatment, she matches his energy and says, okay, and then walks away, and you get this shot of her face blank as she's walking down this hall, just knowing it's not serious. She knows it's not serious. She knows it's just another Tuesday. And then you hear Elvis in the background being oh, I didn't mean it, come back, blah, blah, blah. You watch them grow in this roller coaster of toxic up and downs, of very real human reactions of two people with severe trauma who did not have a strong start, who are all over the place, who both of them don't know exactly what they want or what they need. It's just handled really well. I was talking about that tight shot on Priscilla going down the hallway. I want to talk about the shots of Priscilla's face throughout this whole movie real quick. Kaylee Spaney is my new queen of close-ups. The amount of emotion that she's able to portray with just the eyes, with just the twitch of a mouth, with just the light turn of a head, wonderful. This movie is a poignant portrait of loneliness in its truest sense. It's tangible in every shot where Priscilla's alone, every shot where you just see Priscilla's face, where you can hear the room around her, and you see her eyes not looking at anyone, you see her not connecting with anyone, but you see her being in this crowded room. You see her saying goodbye to her husband, and her husband not even, responding. It's so intense. It's a loneliness that is so painful that I found myself tearing up during parts of the movie that were not sad, just because I could feel Priscilla's pain in these tight shots. It was so intense. It really was just like raw. I think most people in their lives have been a part of a relationship like this, or have been in a situation like this, where that type of loneliness is all-consuming and destructive, and you are doing everything you can to try to find a solution, and you can't. And this movie captures that really well with these specific shots of Priscilla, but a lot of reasons. The movie captures these feelings for a lot of reasons. I would say this is probably some of Sofia Coppola's best cinematography ever. I think that this was filmed in such a way that it got the job done and then some. The aesthetics in this movie are very clean and solid as well. I feel like Sofia Coppola, she knows what's up. You know what I mean? She's never made an ugly movie unless it's needed to be ugly. You know what I mean? I think this was such a beautifully shot movie. The color palette was amazing. The sets were wonderful. Apparently all the sets were built. Apparently not a lot of them were done on location. I believe that includes Graceland. And to that regard, mad props to the set designers. I think without these spanning sets of pastel colors and glittery animal statues and giant Elvis Prestley records and initials and monograms and paintings and these weird windows that are huge but let no light in to show exactly how Priscilla is isolated. So good. You might have noticed I'm not talking about the plot of the movie, but that's because it's a biopic. In theory, you could argue it doesn't have a plot. It's more telling you facts versus having a plot. But that's what a good biopic is. You know what I mean? I saw this movie with my fiance, and when we walked out of the theater, my fiance was kind of it just ended. And on one regard, I was kind of shocked by the ending too. You know what I mean? It came a little quick, even though the movie's over 2 hours long, but the pacing is done so well. You could have told me this was an hour and a half and I'd agree with you. But so when it ended, it did feel like it ended rather quickly, because so much of the movie is loaded with pre-marriage to Elvis Presley stuff. And then I would say the last third is maybe even less than the last third is actual marriage, baby, etc. And then it's over. And when my fiance turned to me, he's like, it was just over. I kind of was yeah. But life is just kind of over. You know what I mean? What in a good biopic, you feel the life, and I feel like I felt the life in this. There wasn't a contrived third act explosion. There were moments where you were oh my god, you know what I mean? But there wasn't an explosion, which I also really liked, because some of the parts in this movie felt like a thriller. I was waiting for the next bad thing to happen, but then nothing happened, because that's not how it works. You know what I mean? That's not how life executes itself. You start the movie, immediate start, the first time Priscilla Presley is confronted with the concept of Elvis. You end it on her last moment of her existence regarding Elvis. The first time a soldier mentions Elvis's name to Priscilla, the last time Priscilla ever leaves the gates of Graceland. I think that's such good bracketing for the movie. I don't think it needed anything else. Which is why I'm not talking about the plot. Because there's not really a plot as much as there is a story being told. It felt very real, authentic, human. I felt like Priscilla Presley herself was talking to me about her life. It was very, very good. And I think I could talk all day, up and down, about the treatment that Elvis gave Priscilla, the immaturity that Priscilla was surrounded by to allow her to get in a situation like that so young. I think there were so many layers to this that could be talked about in regards to their characters and how they worked with the plot of the movie. But again, these are real human beings. It feels kind of wrong to try to analyze the characters instead of analyzing the actors and how they worked with those characters, because I think that's a different story. You know what I mean? I think I don't have the authority to analyze a deep relationship analysis of Elvis and Priscilla. I am not a relationship therapist. I'm not a licensed therapist at all. And I don't know Priscilla as a person. But if she supports this movie and she condones the movie and she still stands by that Elvis is the love of her life, then who am I to say otherwise? That being said, her daughter hated this movie. Her daughter hated this movie. And I think there's something to be said about that too. You know what I mean? Every story has multiple sides. I'm glad I got to see this side of it. This side of it was very emotional, and I liked it. And if you want to see another side of it, cool, go watch Elvis by Baz Luhrmann. A moment in the film that keeps coming back and getting stuck in my brain is the moment where we see Elvis's huge performance in Vegas, and we only see it from the back, and we only see it silhouetted with light. You see it with the Space Odyssey music. I don't know, it was such a great way to do that. He wasn't the point of the movie. You know what I mean? He wasn't. He was a figurehead. He was a majestic creature just out of reach. He was a mythical being. He was a god. He was not the point of the film. Speaking of that, the soundtrack, it was a really big deal that the soundtrack didn't have any Elvis music on it. I just loved that detail. I thought it was a great choice not to have any Elvis music in the film. Now, the reason they didn't include any Elvis music in the film is kind of sad. It's because Elvis's estate didn't allow them to. Elvis Prestley Enterprises didn't let them use any Elvis music. But I liked that. I liked the choice that ended up becoming. I liked the music that was used. I liked it. I also think it was very interesting watching Elvis's relationship with his music through the eyes of Priscilla. Because in the movie Elvis, you know, the concept of Elvis's music and what he wanted to do and create versus what people wanted him to create, you know, the tension was there when it came to that. Then over here in the Priscilla movie, we see a lot more of his angst with that, but in a way to where it's like, there's an edge of like, a lot more bitterness in the Priscilla movie than there was in the Elvis movie. We saw an Elvis who was a lot more bitter and jaded and like angry at the world and almost angry at his own music. I don't know, it was very interesting, very interesting. I really liked the film. Long story short, I really, really, really liked the film. I'm also really grateful that this film came out at the time it did, because I feel like it's turning a lot of like younger Gen Z and Gen Alpha, turning them on Sofia Coppola, which makes me very happy. This is also a movie that I would definitely go to rewatch, and I would recommend other people rewatch, because I feel like certain shots and some of the beauty of the cinematography can be lost on a first-time viewer just because there is so much happening and so much intense emotion that I feel like there were moments where I'm like, I remember exactly how I felt watching this scene. I don't remember how the scene looked as much as I want to, because I know it looked beautiful, but I was feeling more of the pain during it than looking at it, you know what I mean? So I want to rewatch it again just to look at the pretty pictures. My biggest critiques of the film come from, again, pacing. I felt like the movie was very weighted with pre-marriage Priscilla and then just kind of sped through the marriage, the baby, etc. You could argue that this was a choice on purpose to show that as Priscilla gains her freedom and is happier and Elvis is around less and she's spending more time with her daughter and stuff, life returns to a healthy, normal pace and it passes and it's all good. But like, we didn't get to see anything with her and her affair with the karate instructor, the hitman Elvis put out on her karate instructor. Like, we didn't get to see any of the intensity of that part. We only got the coming together, which is fine. But I think I'm at an age now, I'm 24, I'm at an age now to where it's like, there's a lot of movies about people coming together. There's a lot of movies about people falling in love, going to get loved, and then the ending is the marriage. Show me the after. Show me the mess. Show me the two people trying to co-inhabit and live together. I find myself geared more towards those stories now, or at least stories that involve more long-term relationships and consequences. I think that watching them come together was really done well. I wish we had seen more of the second half. I think that's my biggest critique. My second critique is the scene where they drop acid. Elvis did genuinely go through a multitude of like religions. I think like the term faith hopping was used by Priscilla in her book, if I'm not mistaken. He had his own thoughts and feelings and desperation to find meaning. And especially after being in the army, especially after reaching this level of fame, his death of his mother, there were layers to this that made him desperately seek faith wherever he could find that faith. Showing him with like the guru and showing him getting into this new age stuff. Like, I'm glad they did it. I'm glad they talked about it. I'm glad they talked about him doing acid. I thought it was funny, but like the scene of them doing acid, maybe it's because I've seen Jacob Elordi in Euphoria, but I just felt like I had seen the scenes before. It didn't feel as like solid to me. I have no idea how else to describe that. It was the weakest part of the movie in my opinion. So yeah, thank you all for letting me ramble about Priscilla. I don't do a lot of unscripted, rambly type of videos, so I hope any of this made sense. And then if it didn't make sense, treat it like you're talking, like I'm your pretentious film friend, and you're just having a convo with me. And maybe you took us to a restaurant somewhere and you made the mistake of asking me if I've seen any good movies recently, and then I pop off like this. Just pretend it's like that.